Give you guys a moment to get back to your seats. I was just joking with my buddy Robbie. I was telling him during worship service I had to make sure this thing was turned off because I was like, if everybody can hear me singing, everybody's everybody's going home. There'll be nobody here to listen to me. I spent all this time working on this. So, my name is Brad Matthews. I was originally asked to speak today because Daniel was supposed to be in India on a missions trip. For unforeseen circumstances, they weren't able to go. I'd actually texted them because I thought maybe I had a way out of this. I said, you still want me to preach even though you're going to be gone? And he said, yeah. He said, I want you to have the opportunity. So I guess even as a preacher, if you get a day off, you take it. But for those of you that may be here for the first time, I'm not the pastor of this church. I'm just a member. Okay, come back next Sunday because we're really blessed to have the preacher that we have. You know, if you guys have not been here before, you have not listened to him, you don't know who he is. I know he's listening to me right now. Since he's not here, I'll give you a tip. If you ever want to make Daniel feel really awkward, give him a compliment because he gets really awkward. But come back next Sunday. You owe it to yourself to be here, listen to him preach, give him an opportunity to pour into you. You know, we've been coming here for almost 3 years now. And it was probably about 6-7 months in, I remember texting Daniel. Daniel he got through this sermon, and he had been on a sermon, I think for a couple of weeks where he was, Daniel's very action-oriented. His church is very action-oriented, and that's something I've grown to appreciate about it. I'm not big on people who talk. I don't like to talk a lot, so this is really out of my comfort zone. But I remember I had an idea, and I called Daniel, and I said, man, can you send me the logo of the church? I said I would like to put it on business cards, or just cards, and randomly leave them places, right? Leave them at a restaurant, leave them just wherever, people would see them. And I told him, I said, maybe if I do that, more people will start coming to our church. And he stopped me, and he said, I could care less about growing my congregation. He said, I just want more people to be introduced to the kingdom. And that grabbed my respect so much because, as you guys can tell by being around him, he's not worried about how many seats are filled on Sundays. He's just trying to introduce people to God and Jesus, and that gives a lot of respect. For the longest time, I wanted to be a baseball coach, right? That was my thing. I played in high school. I played in college. I was very, very blessed to have the opportunity to play past college and play professionally for a few years, coach professionally. I did all that stuff. But I can remember when I was telling my father, I said, telling him I want to be a baseball coach. We grew up in a sports family. That was the whole thing. And my dad told me, I'll never forget this. He said, when it came time to searching for a job, and this is for any sport, right? Football, basketball, whatever. He told me, he said, you never want to be the man that replaces the man. You want to be the man that replaces the man that replaced the man, right? And what that means is you probably don't want to be the head football coach at the University of Alabama right when Nick Saban leaves. Give another guy a chance to come in, screw it up, and then you step in behind him, and then it makes you look that much better, right? So I was sitting there thinking about this Sunday, and it was like, man, 2 Sundays ago, Brett stood up here, gave an amazing sermon. It was awesome. Last Sunday, we had 22 baptisms, and now I get to step up here and try to talk. So right now, I'm literally the man that replaces the man, right? Next Sunday, Daniel gets the opportunity to be the man that replaces the man that replaced the man, right? So speaking of 22 baptisms, right? How amazing is that? Baptism Sunday has started to become one of my favorite days. Sometime over the summer, we went to the beach, and that Sunday was Baptism Sunday. And I remember telling my wife, I was like, we have to leave early. I don't want to miss Baptism Sunday. How many people are here right now that were baptized last Sunday? I know you guys were. You guys were. That's awesome. I want you guys to know that, those of you that are here were baptized, I prayed pretty heavily for you guys afterwards. And I really hope that every day that you guys wake up, you feel the same as you did when you got lifted out of the water. I really do. And I hope you guys also understand that your journey is starting now, right? It's not going to get any easier. It's actually going to get tougher, right? They don't call it a narrow path for nothing. I'd say it was about a year ago, I ran across this story that was told by a guy, Alistair Begg was his name. I actually think Ivan was the one who posted this on Facebook. So Ivan, don't ruin the story, right? But the story describes what it was like when the thief showed up into heaven, right? And the story basically goes like this. The thief walks in. He's confused, right? And the angels are sitting at the table, and they look at him, and they say, "What are you doing here?" The thief goes, "I don't know," right? And the angels go, "What do you mean you don't know?" I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing here. So the angels are looking at each other. They don't know what to do. So they're like, "Let me call my supervisor," right? Supervisor angel comes down. He's looking at the papers. He says, "I got a few questions for you. First of all, are you clear on the doctrine of justification by faith?" The thief said, "Never heard of it." "What about the doctrine of Scripture?" The thief just stares at him, blank look on his face. So now the frustration's setting in. Nobody can figure this out. The angels are talking. The supervisor's talking to him. And they finally look back at the thief, and they say, on what grounds are you here?" And he looks back at him, and he says, "The man in the middle said I could come." Right? I've been running, and I'm going to throw this disclaimer in here. Okay? You guys that have been in the men's ministry, you'll get this. Anything that I say today is not personally directed at anybody. Okay? I have my own issues and things that I've pushed through. I remember Roy's here somewhere. I don't know where he's at. There he is. After a meeting one night, Roy came up to me, and we were talking about just the path that you go on, when you're a Christian. And he said, think of God. He's a welder, right? What was it you said he was? He was a blacksmith, right? Blacksmith, right? And we're the iron. When a blacksmith goes to shape iron, right, he doesn't put it in the microwave, right? It's not going to work, okay? He takes that and he shoves it deep down into the fire till that thing starts changing colors, till it's melted down, till it's broken. And that way he can pull it out and start to mold it into the way he wants it to be. And you know what? If it's not molded the right way, he shoves it right back in, and he leaves it in that fire. He doesn't leave it. He doesn't put it in and pull it back out, and things are going to be perfect. It's over and over and over again. He pulls it out sticks it on the anvil, and he pounds it, right, until it starts to get where it is. That's been, and I'm not the only one in this room, right, but that's been me, right? I'm not perfect. Like I said, I'm just a member of the church here, right? And I've had my own wrestling matches with God. I go through them all the time. Okay, so the things that I say, if I get worked up, a lot of this, it's me outwardly directing things that are on me. I don't mean anything personal towards anybody. So Eddie and Ivan told me I'm not allowed to ever say I'm sorry, so that's my version of it, right? So I've been running our men's ministry for over a year now, and I'm getting more comfortable doing these talks and slowly kind of getting the hang of it, in my own eyes. But a Sunday morning, in front of a church that I've grown to love is, a little bit different. And I got to be honest with you guys. I cannot educate you the way Daniel can. And I cannot educate you the way Brett can. But I'm getting better at it, right? I have no idea if I even properly know how to put a sermon together, right? And to be honest with you, I have no idea what I'm doing up here, okay? I have no idea. But I can tell you how I got here. Okay, my whole life has been 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? I was raised in a Methodist church when I was a kid. My mother used to take us to church. I stopped going in my teenage years because of sports. Sports pretty much ruled my life for the longest time. I got baptized October 9th of 2022. And before I got baptized, I remember sitting down with Daniel, and I was talking to him. I said, I got baptized in a Methodist church when I was like 6 weeks old. I got saved at a buddy's funeral in high school. I got saved again at a non-denominational church down in Alabama. Um, I accepted Christ somewhere else along the line. And I figured if I do the baptism here, if I am lucky enough to get to heaven, I can pull out and say I got that card. I did that one, and sports pretty much ruled my life up until about 2 years ago when I decided to step away from coaching. It was a decision I made because I just didn't want to miss Sundays anymore. Be honest with you, that I didn't want to miss Sundays, and I didn't want to send a message to my kids that sports were more important. So I decided to step away. All the stories and details and in between all of this can be saved for another day, maybe if Daniel ever allows me back up here. But the title of my sermon is 100-100, okay? And what that represents is the relationship that we have with Jesus Christ. What Jesus wants from us, and all he wants from us, is a relationship with him. 100-100 represents the effort it takes from both sides in order to make a relationship work and flourish. Relationships are not 50-50, contrary to what a lot of people think and a lot of people believe, right? You'll hear that a lot. Relationships are 50-50, they're give or take. They don't work. Nothing you ever do that you put 50% effort into will succeed. Absolutely nothing, right? I can remember growing up, sports was my thing, right? That's what I wanted to do. And I can remember my father, who was really instrumental in building that, just determination and hard work and all that stuff. I remember him telling me I was like 11, really, really young. And he said, if you don't work hard, there's going to be a kid out there that's going to get the scholarship that was meant for you, right? And that's what he told me. And it's been like that. My wife, when we were just dating and we were just engaged, she saw me do things, right? But it wasn't until we got married and we lived together that she saw me 24 hours a day, and she was like, you're nuts, right? Because I don't know the in-between. I'm either not involved in something or I am totally obsessed. There's nothing in the middle of that for me, right? And the thing is with this 100-100 is we never have to question Jesus' effort level in this, right? He has been and he always will be 100. He couldn't give any more than what he already gave. And I think at these times, when you hear these people online, or you might be trying to witness to somebody or talk to them, and they'll say, well, what has Jesus done for me? Right? You hear people say that. And it really kind of blows my mind, right? When somebody says, what has Jesus done for me? And as reluctant as I am to answer the question, I will. He just died for you and gave his life, right? Left the comforts of heaven to come down and live amongst us, and died the most horrific death so you could be saved. That's all, right? That's all he's done for you. But what about us? The real question is, what have we done for him? Not what has he done for us? How do we give 100? Is it even possible for us to give 100? Now, since I've been married for 8 years, I'm obviously an expert on relationships, okay? So what we have is we have a few different things here. Number one is availability. Okay, John 15, 4-5 says, remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. In order for us to have a successful relationship, and it's closer to giving Jesus 100% of ourselves, is to get rid of the distractions that stop our relationships from growing. Farmers, right? You think about this, and we also have the passage where we talk about trimming branches, right? Farmers trim branches that were not producing fruit so they wouldn't weigh down the tree, right? But the other reason that they would trim those dead branches was so that the strength and the nutrients that were flowing through the tree could flow into the branches that were bearing fruit and that were not dead. Okay? I don't know about you guys, but I have to remain in Jesus. I have to be present. I have to spend time with him. I need to be in church. I need to be surrounded by people who hold me accountable and who are walking on the same narrow path that I'm on. Something we talk about a lot in the men's ministry, right? And it's that societal thing of, if you ask, what's a man? It's like, well, he's a guy that could survive on his own, and be in the woods and live in a cabin and, whatever. But there's a saying in war that he who's alone dies first, right? To me, right, and we talk about this too, is the last person that you should be surrounding yourself with is somebody that doesn't care what other people think about them. Okay, because the people that I try to keep around myself, and the guy who made this quote was a guy named Jack Donovan. It was a book he wrote. It was called The Way of Men. Um, he said that if he was in a trench or in a foxhole in the middle of war, he's really going to hope that the guy standing next to him cares what he thinks about him. Right? I want to conduct myself in a way that the people around me, right, they're going to, I care what they think about me. You know, I mean, I got put in a position to run the men's ministry at the church. That's a lot. You know what I mean? Especially with so many guys in here that not just the guys. I mean, I respect everybody here, but we got some really, we got some good guys in our church. You know, I made the comment that you don't see a lot of guys wearing skinny jeans walking through our doors, and I really appreciate that, and we have a good diverse group of men. I care what these guys think about me. I want to conduct myself in a way and hold myself accountable so that I don't let these guys down, right? But if I miss a Sunday, or if we have a week where the church isn't doing weekly gatherings, I find myself missing it. And it's like that anywhere. If I'm away from my wife, I miss her. If I'm away from my kids, I miss them. Right? Same with Jesus. Would you want to be in a relationship with somebody who never wants to spend time with you? And spending time with somebody doesn't always mean being in the same room with them. Right? This is big nowadays, right? Because we have so many distractions. Anybody ever try to have a conversation with somebody while they're staring at their phone and not looking at you? Right? I mean, it's just, how's that make you feel? You might as well you almost want to just stop talking to them and go finish what you're doing. Right? So I can have it's the same thing, right? When we're trying to talk with Jesus and we're trying to have moments with him and spend time with him. When you're with somebody, be with them. Spend time with them. I remember hearing this thing on a podcast one time. It was a guy. He was talking to another gentleman that was on a show, and they were talking about his family, right? His mother and his father. And he asked the guy, he said, how often do you visit your parents? He said, how far away do they live? And he said, well, they live about 6-7 hours away. He said, how often do you visit them? He said, twice a year. How old are your parents? Well, they're 70. And he said, so if your parents lived for another 10 years, like that would be pretty good, right? They're making it into the age of 80. And he's like, yeah. And he goes, well, that means you're only going to see them 10 more times. 20 more times for the rest of their life. Imagine the people that are in your family or your wife or your kids, if I was going to say, you're only going to see them 20 more times before they pass away or you pass away. Right now, all of a sudden, you're really going to be trying to cherish those times that you have with those people. And it's the same thing when we're spending time with Jesus. How many people, when you pray, right, especially when you wake up in the morning, your eyes are groggy, right, and you're trying to pray, and you start, dear Jesus, thank you for today, and the blessings you've given me, and man, I got to brush my teeth. Hey, the kid's out of bed. Oh, sorry, Jesus. And then you get distracted, right? It's kind of one of those things. Try to force yourself when you're in that conversation and you're spending time with him to be with him. The second point is communication, okay? About a year or so ago, I remember Daniel came out to my house, my property, and we had just walked out of the woods. We were both hunting together. And I told him, I said, man, I'm almost envious or jealous of people who say that they talk to God or they hear God tell them something. I've never done it. That's never happened to me. I never heard God tell me to do anything. And the way he explained it was just so perfect. Some of you have heard this story. But he said if your wife called you from an unknown number and you picked the phone up, the moment she said hello, you know it was her. Right? You have a deep relationship with her. You've been with her for a really long time. You know what she sounds like. Well, the deeper your relationship gets with God, the deeper your relationship gets with Jesus, you're going to start to understand what he sounds like. Right? Because you've been talking to him. I've been with my wife for over 12 years. I know what she sounds like. I know what she sounds like when she's happy. I really know what she sounds like when she's upset. Right? I totally get it. But plain and simple, you have to talk. No relationship can flourish without communication, and there's no way to know each other's needs without clear communication. Matthew 7:8 says, ask and it shall be given. Seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be open to you. For everyone that asks receives, and he that seeks finds, and to him that knocks it shall be open. There's a lot of boldness to this passage because back then it was only thought of that there were a few special men of God that received what they requested. But this verse is telling us that we have a clear line of communication with him. Now, if the ask and shall be given were so simple in relationships, right, nobody would be arguing over what do you want for dinner, right, because you would just clear line of communication to be able to tell somebody. But I started to force myself to pray and pray pretty consistently. And it didn't matter if God was hearing me speak or if I felt him communicating with me. I just kept talking. Right? And I'll give you an example. There was a couple years ago, and he's actually here today, which is really exciting. A couple years ago, it wasn't this past Christmas before. We were putting up a Christmas tree over in that corner. And it was Brandon and Damon and I, right? And we were just over there just, talking, not about anything specific. But, I knew Damon and a little bit of his situation and stuff like that. But I remember leaving, and it was like the first time that I felt like a tug towards something, right? That it was like, man, you should go up to Damon. There's another guy that was with him, a guy named Chase. Just go up to him and just ask them if they want to hang out, right? Which is a really weird thing for a guy to do to another guy, right? It's just really awkward to just be like, hey, man, you want to go to dinner? It's an awkward thing to do. Like, it's just not, I don't know how to approach that. It was easy when I wanted to ask my wife out. It was just like, do you like food? Me too. We should eat something together. You know what I mean? So it's, but I remember I went up to him one day after church, and I was like, hey, man, like, what's your schedule? Like, what do you guys got to do? And at the time, Damon, I hope you don't mind me sharing this. It's a little too late to ask anyway. But Damon was living behind the church in one of the houses, and I knew they had, certain things over there that they had to go through. And he was like, yeah, and so we picked the time out and went and picked him up, and we went out, we ate, we hung out, we just talked, told me a story. The guy's one of my better friends now. All because I just said, okay, I'm going to listen. I told Daniel, he's been on his kick lately with the kingdom builders of talking about listening and just obeying. And I told him, I said, God is the only person I'm a yes man to. Everybody else I'll argue with. But if God tells me to do something, I just go, yep, okay. When Daniel asked me to do this, okay. Run the men's ministry, okay. You do, okay. Like, anybody else though, I'll argue with you. But Damon's one of my better friends now. We don't go more than 2, 3, 4 weeks without talking to each other. We catch up. He made the trip an hour and a half up here from Moore County to come hear me. It's been a pretty cool thing, all because my communication with God opened up, and I listened to him, and I said, okay, I'm gonna go talk to him, right? Which brings me to my next point: is trust. Okay, no relationship is gonna last without trust, and this may be something that we're constantly crawling back to Jesus, begging him for, right? Always asking forgiveness for the things we do, right? We'll sin, and we know we sin. We know we do something wrong, whether it's a negative thought, no matter what it is. And then we'll say we're sorry. And then we end up doing it again. And then we go back and say we're sorry, right? Before, as the guys in Alabama, when I was living down there would say, before Jesus, right? I can remember the way I was living. I would do certain things. I'd wake up the next morning, right? Feel terrible. Like, I'm never doing that again. Saturday the next week rolls around, I'm doing the same thing all over again, right? And that happens a lot with different things in our life, right? We'll do something wrong. Sorry, forgive me. But then we're doing it again, okay? One of the multitude of problems in our society is that people have put their trust in the wrong places. People worship things without realizing that they do. Alcohol, money, tobacco, lust, politics, attention. Millions of people hover around TV screens waiting for somebody else to tell them what they ought to think is important, right? We have people online who are on Facebook and on social media who are looking at other people's lives, and it's creating jealousy, right? You're jealous over the life that God gave somebody else, but not appreciating the life that he gave you, right? It's, so-and-so's at the beach all the time. Well, they got all this other stuff they're going through too. Right, the first insurance company I ever worked with, we were down in Athens, Georgia, and this guy's on stage, and he's showing pictures of both of his houses, and He's got a $150,000 car standing behind him, and he's bragging about his $75,000 watch, right? And I had a $19 watch from Academy Sports on my wrist, and I was like, I can go in the water with this thing. You know what I mean? But he's going off. Look at all this stuff. Look at all this stuff. Look, I got all these material things. He's going on and on and on. And I'm sitting there thinking, this guy's a freaking coke addict, and his wife's leaving him. And his family's destroyed. But he's got all this stuff. Who cares? You can't take it with you. People are hovering around TV screens. Social media addictions are a real thing. And it's ruining people and their peace. People are wanting things just because they see that somebody else has it. Psalms 27 reads, some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. Proverbs 3, 5 through 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. I promised myself I would not go into a personal rant about my true thoughts of social media, but I'm going to make one comment. If you want to know what somebody's doing, call them up or go visit them. It's going to mean way more to that person than some half-hearted fake thumbs up over some picture that they posted. Just go talk to them, right? You almost wonder how people even lived 100 years ago without being able to go, well, I wonder what so-and-so's doing. You know what I mean? Just go talk to them. That's why, watch teenage kids. This is my proof. Watch a teenager. They cannot look another person in the face when they talk to them because they're not used to it. Right? I used to coach kids in baseball, and you'd hear them in the dugout talk, right? And if you talk about girls they go to school with, and they're like, I'm going to message her. I'm like, just go talk to her. What's the worst thing that's going to happen is she's going to say no, and you're just right back in the position you're in right now. Just move on to the next one. Right? But trust in him, and that's it. You don't need anything else, but you got to prove your trust in him and act in a way that allows him to trust you with the blessings he has in store for you. There are things we all want, dreams we all have, and just because you do everything right doesn't promise that those things here on earth, but you get the greatest gift of all with a ticket through the gates. Your dreams are just delayed. They're not denied, but you have to act on the things that you're asking forgiveness for. Don't pray for financial freedom if you're a gambler. All right? I remember when I was playing minor league baseball in West Virginia, we had this guy from California. He's not listening to this, and he's not here. His name's Joey Miro, right? So it's not going to bother him. Joey was Catholic, and he would show up to Sundays. I was the chaplain of our team. I have no idea why at the time, but I was. Okay, and it was my job in minor league baseball. You don't get the opportunities to go to church on Sunday. I did one time. We were in Greenville, Tennessee, right? And I had to walk to church, me and my buddy, and we walked back, and I got fined $50 for being late to pick up my laundry. My manager told me I couldn't use God as an excuse, right? But I remember watching Joey would always show up, and every night this guy would get hammered. Every night. We lived in West Virginia at the time. The only thing that was open after our games was Applebee's. Don't ever ask me to go to Applebee's. I will not go. I'm sick of that place. I ate it every night for 8 months straight. Okay, but I mentioned something to him one time about his faith, right? Because he's just, every night he's throwing stuff back. And his response to me was, I'm Catholic. I can just ask for forgiveness tomorrow. Do we need a couple seconds to let this sink in? That he can just do what he wants and ask for forgiveness tomorrow. And the problem is that he's not the only person with this idea. And in my head, I remember thinking, I think God's smarter than that, right? You're not going to play tricks on him, and you're not sneaking anything by him. If you're doing something, he knows you're doing it. If you are willfully sinning, that's a problem, right? You can't just go, you know what, I'll just say I'm sorry and move on because he's forgiving. And I'm not saying that he's not, because he is. But if you're just continuously doing something over and over and over again, you're not getting it by the guy. You're not getting it by him. And one last thing before I move on is for my social media technology thing. Outside of prayer hands and thumbs up, men don't send other men emojis. Okay? Fix yourselves if you do. So, I cannot speak on what it takes to have a relationship work without talking about what Jesus told us was the greatest commandment, and that's love. And you have to love and not just say it. There are a lot of people who say it and may even say it to their closest friends, but you can't back it up. John 13:34 says, "So now I'm giving you a new commandment. Love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other." Jesus is telling us that we should love each other the way he loves us. Good luck with that one, right? It's tough. You're going to have people in your life that are just hard to deal with, right? My mother's got 5 sisters, okay? And all the time my mother's one of the most forgiving people I've ever met, right? And it's our job, and Daniel has said it before, right? It's our job to show people grace. That's what we have to do. You know, we can't save people. I can't save anybody. Nobody in this church can save anybody. But it's our job to show them grace and to love on them and hug on them and keep them around long enough that Jesus can come in and shut the door. He's the closer. We're not the closer. I can remember back to when Mel and I were dating, and I was thinking about popping the question to her. Right? Now, men in my family do not have heartfelt conversations. It's just, I know that's hard to tell, right? But we just don't, right? But I remember asking my father and my grandfather, you know, when my grandmother passed away, that year would have been their 63rd wedding anniversary, right? She passed away from Alzheimer's. I'll get into that in a second. But I remember asking them, I said, how'd you guys know? You know, like, Dad, how'd you know you wanted to marry Mom? Grandpa, how'd you know you wanted to marry Grandma? How'd you know? And the response I got was, you just know. If you can come up with a list of reasons why you should do it, then it's probably not right. I do my best to love my wife the best I can. And when I thought about love, I thought about my grandfather. So in a very condensed version, my grandmother had Alzheimer's disease. Is there anybody in here that's ever dealt with that? A family member with Alzheimer's? It's awful. You cannot explain that to somebody. You have to live through it, right? My grandmother is one of the sweetest women I've ever met in my life. Never said a mean word to anybody. She was just this nice, sweet, kind old lady. You know what I mean? The type that would be on a Hallmark card. She was that woman, right? I tell Mel one of my things I wish that was different about our relationship is she would have been around to meet my grandmother. She never got to meet her. But my grandmother's, they lived in New Jersey, right? I'm from Maryland. My father's from New Jersey. We moved down here when I was like 5. So, I mean, I pretty much grew up down here. But when my grandmother's Alzheimer's got really bad, my grandfather had to move her down from New Jersey. She would actually get to the point where she would call the old number to their house in Maryland and tell them, there's a strange man in my house. Somebody needs to come get me. It was my grandfather. There's nobody else in the house, right? But at the time, I just moved home. I was coaching college baseball in Alabama. I just left to come home to help out, you know, around the house and help my mother, help my grandfather. So I got to see them every single day. And every single day, my grandfather would get up and he'd make my grandmother breakfast. And he'd sit at the table with her. And then he would read to her. He had one of those old school, like 2-level organs that he would play. It had all the flips and knobs and all that stuff on it. It would make different sounds. He played the organ for her. He'd make her lunch. They'd watch TV together. He'd make her dinner. And he did this every day. Whether she was cursing at him, right, which is really strange. You know, you guys that have been through that, you know, people that have dementia and Alzheimer's, a lot of times, they'll attack their caretakers, right? And I'm sitting there watching my grandmother, who's like the nicest woman I've ever met in my life, curse my grandfather out. And he's just sitting there wearing it. I mean, this is a World War II vet. You know, this guy got blown up into a tree one time and fell down and just walked home. You know what I mean? He's a tough guy. But I'm watching this happen, even up until the point that she ended up passing away. But I remember telling myself, I said, I'll never get married unless I can do that. Unless I can do what he did, I'll never get married, because that's what love looked like to me. Because that's a lot. I just met with a woman the other day who got put into a wheelchair 6 months ago, and her husband of 32 years just walked out on her because he didn't want to take care of her. She's in a house by herself. She literally cannot get up out of her chair without assistance. And he just left, right? That's not love, okay? But the love that he has for us, he loves us no matter what. Those of you, myself included, that are carrying a burden, that are carrying some weight on your shoulder, you may think, and this was me, You may think that you need to fix yourself before you come to Jesus. You don't. You don't need to fix yourself. You are fine. Let him fix you, right? You just need to accept his love. That's all you have to do. We need to accept his love, but we need to do our best to love him back because that's what he deserves. And because I was talking about my wife, I get to tell you our amazing proposal story. I was literally sitting in my kitchen talking to my buddies, eating a sandwich, and I just went, you know what, the heck with it. I'm just going to go do it. And just went to her house and proposed to her in the street in front of her house. It was really romantic, right? And I can remember sitting around a bunch of guys one time, and they were all talking about like how much money they spent on the rings for their wife. And some guys, I spent $2,000, I spent $7,000, and I spent $6,000. And they got to me, and they said, how much money did you spend on Mel's ring? $50. Now, listen, I didn't buy her like some cheap Dakota ring, right? But the diamond that she has was bought in Hawaii by my grandfather when he was flying home from Japan in World War II. So all I had to do was spend $50 to get it resized. So, but I told her, I said, if you ever leave me, you can't keep that thing. You got to keep that back. Yeah, it's a family heirloom. But another thing I want to talk on that doesn't come up a lot when you talk about relationships, but it's something that means a lot to me, and I've noticed the massive effect that it has on people, and that's positivity. Okay, the people that I try to keep closest to me are very positive people, good energy people. Harvard did a study one time. They said that the 5 people that you spend your most time with dictate like 95% of your success. You have to keep good people around you, right? There's nothing like a negative person to bring a vibe down. And we spoke about this recently in one of our men's meetings, right? When it came to trying to spread the word and trying to get people to come to church that don't come to church. You should never, ever try to invite somebody to church that doesn't go by walking up to them and going, if you don't come to church, you're going to burn in hell. See that vibe? It's terrible, right? That person is going to wake up Sunday morning and get dressed and feel like they're going to their own funeral, right? They're not going to get excited about it. If I want to invite somebody to church and I want to try to do that, I'm doing it in a positive manner. I am letting them know that this is the effect that Jesus has had on my life. My marriage is better. I'm a better father. I'm surrounded by better people. Things that used to bother me, they don't bother me anymore. I'm not worried about financial stuff because I know he's got it. I'm not worried about health. I know he's got it. Whatever's coming my way, he's got it. I don't worry about that stuff anymore. I don't stay up late at night anymore. Those things that are bothering you, all you got to do is show up. If you just show up and accept Jesus Christ, these things go away. They're not things that you have to deal with anymore. Philippians 4:8 says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Band, you guys can come up. The only bird that dares to peck at an eagle is the crow. The crow sits on an eagle's back and bites its neck. The eagle does not respond or fight with the crow. It does not spend time or energy on the crow. Instead, it opens its wings and it rises higher into the heavens. The higher the flight, the harder it is for the crow to breathe. And eventually, the crow falls off due to lack of oxygen. Learn from the eagle and don't fight the crows. Keep ascending. They might be along for the ride, but they'll soon fall off. Don't allow yourself to succumb to distractions, but keep your focus on the things above and continue rising. I accepted Jesus Christ on October 9th of 2022, right? I flew out of the water. You guys got baptized, you got lucky. We didn't have a heater back then. That water was freezing cold when I got in there. Damon remembers, he was there. We got baptized on the same day. But I remember when I truly accepted it, it wasn't the baptism. It wasn't coming out of the water. It wasn't drying myself off. It wasn't the high fives and the hugs and, man, it's awesome that you did it, right? It was everything that came after it when I truly and fully surrendered and let God take over my life, that my eyes opened and life looked different to me. I could see things I never saw before. I noticed things I've never noticed. My taste in music changed. My goals changed. My speech changed. It's still not perfect, but it's way better. My anxiety and my stress disappeared. I don't need to worry about some negative, fear-filled message. I'm bathing in the glory of God. I'm walking with the greatest man who ever touched foot down on the dirt. Aspire for your 100, and you know what you guys get? You get a relationship with him. And who is him? Glad you asked. If you ask him, he'll say, I am he. But I'll tell you who he is. He's my friend. And let me introduce you to him. The well runs deep with this one. This guy right here, he can love and care for you like nobody you've ever met. He can heal wounds and mend broken hearts. He's the best doctor you'll ever meet. There was a guy one time, he just went up to him. The guy had never walked in his life. And my friend walked up to him and said, pick up your mat and walk. And the guy did it. No rehabs, no prescriptions, just got up and walked. A woman who was bleeding nonstop, all she had to do was touch his robe. She was fixed. Don't make him mad though. Right? One time, my buddy, let me tell you what he did. He walked into his house, and people were doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and he cleared the room out. He was flipping over tables. You understand the type of fortitude it takes to clear a room out? Right? Imagine right now somebody coming in here, right, and having such a presence and filling everybody in here that's doing things wrong with fear that you run out and the room is empty. Right? I asked our guys in the men's meeting one time, and I'll ask you guys here, raise your hands. Who thinks Jesus is a peaceful man? Raise your hand if you think he's peaceful. Okay? You cannot be peaceful unless you are capable of violence, because if you are not capable of violence, you're just harmless. Okay? He walked into a room and cleared it out. But you got to be careful. He's got a sense of humor. A few days after his resurrection, he just shows up on the shore. His buddies are out fishing, right? Shows up on the shore, hide behind the bushes. There's no trumpets. Nobody's releasing doves because he's here. All he does, jokingly, is stick his head out and say, hey, why don't you try throwing your nets on the other side? Full circle. Came right back to where the first time they met him. And best of all, and this one's for you guys, is you can't kill him. You can't kill him. They tried to and they couldn't. He marched down into hell and he snatched the keys away from him. Is any of this stuff registering with you guys? You can have a relationship with him. He can be right beside you every step. You can accept him, and he's here with open arms. You just got to accept it. You don't need anything else. You don't need politics. You don't need social media. You don't need alcohol. You don't need drugs. You don't need anything but him. And as my mentor, Jim Freeland, said, I don't need anything. I'm just a God man. Altars are open. The band's going to play one of my favorite songs. Please stand and worship.
Great are you.
give you the power to face whatever it is that you need to face. He's equipping you to push back darkness and to push back the things that are bothering you and keeping you down. All you have to do is just accept it. Just take it in. Just tell him, Jesus, you come into my life, you take it over. You take over my finances, you take over my family, you take over my future. Everything that you do is for him. And that's it, for him. Dear Lord, we thank you for today. We thank you for the blessings that you've given us. We pray for safe travels home for those who are here and safe travels for those that are coming. Lord, I pray for those who are out there that need you, that need you in their life, Lord, even if they may not know it yet. Those that might be walking the line and fighting that eternal battle, Lord, that you just take over, that they are capable of fully surrendering to you. Lord, I pray for those who are seeking you, that they find you, Lord, that you take over and you show them the love that you have for them and the changes that you can make in their life. Lord, we thank you so much for the opportunity to gather together and to talk about you and how great you are and how amazing you are. We pray all these things in your name. Amen. You guys be safe. Appreciate it.